Get in here, get in here, get in here, best friend. Because I got to view a letter, okay? She said that her spouse is toxic. That's what she said. And I'm going to tell you this right now, okay? What she's asking for is advice on how to deal with a toxic spouse. Get in here, get in here, get in here. Click like and click share. Let me know when you shared it. She's asking for advice on how to deal with a toxic spouse, but here's the reality. Here's the reality. Toxic people don't just have to be your spouse. It could be your kids. It could be your siblings. It could be your best friends. It could be coworkers, your boss. It could be anybody. The reality is this, there's more than one just pandemic in the world right now. There's a second pandemic that's been going on for a long time, and that's the pandemic of toxicity. Okay? So I'm going to give you 3 tips, baby, 3 tips on how to deal with a toxic person. This will stop them in their tracks. It will literally take your power back. It will set the stage. I guarantee you this. It will set the stage for you no longer have to be aggravated, annoyed, frustrated, hurt by these toxic people, all right? It takes their power away, all right? So get in here, get in here, get in here. Click like, click share, send those stars so I can see your comments, all right? And what I want you to take good notes too, okay, baby? Because somebody's going to get free tonight, all right? So the first thing you have to remember about toxic people is this, okay? The first thing you have to remember is that they only have the power that you give them. All right. They only have that power. They have no other power whatsoever than the power that you give them. So when you understand that, that sets the stage for you then to do a whole number of things that will empower you to no longer give them any power. One of the best things you can ever do when dealing with a toxic person, especially if you're in conflict or in some form of just an unhealthy exchange with them, is listen to me close. Do not allow them to define the narrative of what's being discussed within that conversation. Let me tell you one of the most toxic things that someone can do, right? And this is a sign of a toxic person. You go to them and you say, hey, so-and-so, I want to talk to you about about how I'm feeling about what you said, how I'm feeling about what you did, how I'm feeling about whatever it may be. Listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. And then they respond with the ultimate toxic response. I hear you, but let me tell you what you did to me. But what about with this? What about that? They constantly want to flip it back on you. They want to flip it back on you. They want to flip it back on you. Even if they have a valid point to share, the reality is that it's toxic for them to do that because they're not even hearing you. They are literally minimizing or disregarding your feelings just so that they can turn it back around on you. Or what they will do is something that we call like a red herring, which is essentially you come to them about one thing to be able to say, baby, I'm really annoyed that you came home so late last night. Where were you at? And they turn around, I get tired of you always worrying about where I'm at. What about the fact that I'm always taking good care of you and you don't even care about that? You don't think about the fact that I'm working real hard for you. You're inconsiderate. And they go into a whole different thing. They try to distract you with something else, right? That is something that a toxic person really can do, and they can do it very, very, very well. And if you're not paying attention, you will get caught up in that. Listen when I tell you this, because there's some toxic people out here who are going to be mad at me for telling you this tip. You will get caught up in that, and you will end up within a whole exchange about the narrative that they are setting rather than focused on the narrative at hand, which is what you brought to the table. So here's what you do when dealing with a toxic person who wants to try to change the narrative, change the topic, turn it back around on you. What you need to do is stick with your point. Listen to me when I tell you this, okay? Stick to your point. So when you are going to deal with a toxic person, and you know this person is toxic, you know they got some toxic traits, all right? Some people you love most got some toxic traits. That doesn't mean you don't need to be in a relationship with them, but it does mean you need to gird yourself up really well before you go into conversation with them, okay? So when you're going to deal with this toxic person, okay, the first thing you need to do before even going to them so that you can stick to your point and not allow them to define the narrative is be very clear before going to them. What is the point that I want to convey to them? All right. If you want to go to them about something to have a conversation, what specifically do I want to let them know? Be very clear. And it can't just be, I want to let them know how I feel, okay? You need to be coming to them with a very specific point that you want to make to them. Why is that important? Because when they inevitably try to change the story and try to redefine the narrative, to twist it around, to distract you from what you're feeling, or to try to turn it within their favor, by you remembering why you came to them in the first place, that will allow you to keep on coming back to you. And I'm going to tell you a simple way that I do it, because I don't even have to get confrontational about it, okay? I used to hoop and holler and scream when I would deal with this kind of stuff because it's so frustrating. And then what I learned was you can't do that. Because the minute you do that, they try to turn it around on you. When they try to take you off subject, like, no, pay attention to what I'm saying. Then they get all mad. Then they say, oh, look at you. Calm down. Why are you behaving that way? You're the only one losing your temper. So here's how I learned to do it, all right? How I learned to do it is when I'm talking to them, hey, so-and-so, I want to talk with you about my feelings about X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever it may be. Have you clicked share on this? Thank you so much, Jenny Hewley, for sharing this, and Catherine Hall for sharing this, and Heather Jones for sharing this. Keep on sharing it and let me know that you share it so I can call your name out, okay? What I do is when they try to take it off subject, I get quiet in that moment. As soon as I recognize they're trying to take it off subject or trying to spin it around, I get quiet and I say, I let them get it all out. I'm not responding. I get quiet. I say, And after they've got it all out, I say, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I would love to discuss that a little bit more. However, when I initiated this conversation with you, my point was to come to you to first discuss my feelings. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to first focus on that so we can kind of have a good conversation around that. And then once we've gotten that out the way, then I'm more than happy to jump onto your feelings, because your feelings are valid as well. But I would at least like to cover what I'm bringing to the table since I did initiate this conversation. Does that work for you? I can assure you we will cover what you want to talk about. All right? Okay, great. So as I was saying, okay, and if they cut me off again and try to take it back somewhere else, I do the same thing, get quiet. Yep. Understand what you're saying? But as I was saying, blah, 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 I'm not going to go all over the place. Thank you so much, Christina Cohen, for sharing this video. I'm not going to go all over the place, okay? I'm going to let you get out what you have to get out. And then I'm going to say, but back to what I was saying. All right. And if that person is not able to facilitate a conversation where they can stay on the topic of what I initially brought up in the first place, then I give myself permission to end the conversation at that point in time. Because here's the bottom line. Does that person have valid feelings that they could be bringing to the table? Absolutely. Just because they're trying to distract and redefine the narrative doesn't mean that what they're saying is invalid. Here's what I'm saying. It's inappropriate and inconsiderate and toxic for them to try to distract away from what you brought to the table as if to suggest that their feelings and their thoughts are more important than yours. Your feelings deserve to be addressed first if you brought up the conversation first. If their feelings were so important to them, why didn't they bring that conversation up first? Be very careful about that, okay? Because often when a toxic person is being confronted and they now have a whole litany of grievances towards you, it's not that they have valid grievances towards you. What it often is that they're using those grievances as a way to distract from the conversation, to put you on the defense. So now you're focused on defending yourself rather than focused on getting your point across. So you have to be very centered in, why am I coming to this person in the first place? What is my point? What is it that I want to get across? And be very conscious of when the conversation starts to deviate from that so that you can bring it right back there politely and in a non-confrontational way so that you can stay on track. All right. So that's the first tip about how to deal with a toxic person. Okay. Do not allow them to define the narrative. Stick to your point. And if they are not able to stick with your point and it's just too much for you, give yourself permission to end the conversation. That's very simple. And I'll teach you how to do that a little bit later on. All right. The next tip is this, and this goes along the lines of what I just talked to you all about, okay? Because this was something I really had to learn. One of the best things you can do when dealing with a toxic person is stay focused on what you feel, okay? If you are coming into the conversation and it's, I feel hurt, I feel ignored, I feel whatever it may be, focus on that feeling. Why is that important? Because one of the biggest things that a toxic person will do is they will try to make you be more focused on their feelings than your own feelings, okay? I'm hurt, I'm going through this, I. I'm pissed off, I'm mad. It's always about focusing back on them. But what do you feel? Your feelings are valid. It doesn't matter if the other person is screaming their feelings at you. It doesn't matter if they're crying while they tell you their feelings. It doesn't matter how they express their feelings. That doesn't mean their feelings are more important than yours. You have to be very clear about what your feelings are and be very clear about the fact that your feelings are valid. Okay? Because if you can be very clear about both of those things, then that'll allow you to stay more centered. Often when you're dealing with a toxic person within a conversation, one of the most frustrating things is that you lose sight of what you feel because you're so focused on responding to what they feel or trying to take in what they're feeling. Here's the reality. You got a good heart, so why wouldn't you care about what they feel? But here's the reality of doing that. It takes you away from your own feelings, and then you end up ending the conversation. And comment below if you can relate to this. You end up ending the conversation, and they feel great, like, oh, I'm so glad I got that out. I'm so glad we're in a good place now. Great. And you're like, I feel like I've got things unsaid. I feel like my feelings weren't heard. I feel so unsatisfied by that. And guess whose fault it is? It's your own fault. So when you can stay focused on your own feelings, it helps you to actually do that first step, which is continuing to make sure that you can pull the conversation back to what you started talking about in the first place, all right? The next tip that I'll tell you, and this is a big one, so I'm going to give it a little bit of time with this one, all right? Remember that you have the power to walk away. It takes two to tango. That includes in a confrontation. That includes in a relationship. You hear me when I say this? There is no relationship. I don't care who the person is on this earth. There is no relationship that should ever be completely unconditional. That relationship and that bond should be contingent on a number of things. And one of those things is this relationship healthy for us both? All right? If the relationship cannot be healthy for you both, then you need to give yourself permission to walk away, to take a break, or to permanently sever ties. Okay? I'm being very clear about that. When you're dealing with a toxic person, one of the greatest powers that they have over you is the fact that you don't remember that you don't have to deal with this. I remember when I learned this, it was years ago. I was in an abusive relationship. And I know some of y'all are asking about my hand. This is my right hand. This is my left hand. The camera flips it. So this is not my wedding hand. I'm not married. Okay, right hand, left hand. Camera flips it when you're on live. I was in an abusive relationship, right? And when I was in this abusive relationship, it was emotional and physical. And what kept me in it so long was that I did not really remember that I had the power to walk away. I think on a subconscious level, I'm sure I knew, okay, if I wanted to end it, I'm sure we could end it. But I never really fully owned that. I thought that I had a responsibility to fight for this relationship. I thought that I was doing the right thing by trying to fight for him and trying to be patient with him and trying to help him to change, all right? Because sometimes when you're dealing with toxic people, you stick around even longer because you're trying to help them to be better, all right? I didn't remember that I had the power to leave that relationship. And then one day, while talking to someone who was very close to me, they said, you do realize, I think it was my mother actually, they said, you do realize that you don't have to stay in this relationship. I said, I know, but I love him, all that kind of stuff. She says, but you don't have to stay in this relationship. Like, you don't have to. You're here by choice at this point in time. So anything that you encounter within this relationship moving forward is purely by choice. Anything that you allow or tolerate is purely by choice. You are not handcuffed to this man. You don't have to stay here. There's nothing about this relationship to force you to be here. Sure, you may go through some pain or some heartache by leaving, but that still does not make you stay. This is your choice to stay here. And every time you choose to stay here and don't act as if you are aware that you have the power to leave, you empower him to continue to treat you with the same level of toxicity that he's been treating you with. Some of y'all are being treated with such high levels of toxicity from someone because the reality is that your presence in that relationship is a reflection that you don't know that you have the power to walk away. For some of y'all, you deserve to have walked away a long time ago. If you had walked away 5 years ago, 10 years ago, nobody would have questioned it. And here you are still sitting here and you're wondering, Why does this person continue to treat me with such high levels of toxicity? Because you don't show any reflection that you know your self-worth, because you're still there. The reality is this, is there's not one person in your life, not one person in your life who should be able to be there without having to operate by some level, by some standards, and operate within some boundaries. Excuse me. There's not one person in your life who should be able to do that. And so if you recognize that you have certain boundaries that someone is crossing, then you need to be able to communicate those boundaries and also communicate what the consequence is if they continue to cross those boundaries. And it's very simple and clear. Being able to say, this is my boundary. I love you to death. So on. Let's be cute about it, okay? All right, because we want to make sure we always keep our feminine energy. Okay? So it may be a matter of saying, you know what, baby, let's have a seat. Let's have a talk. Let's have a talk. That's how when I say to have a seat, just know I'm about to deliver some real news to you, okay? Baby, let's have a talk. And then he sits down. Okay. So, baby, I want to share with you how I experienced last night's conversation. Yeah, it was a bit tough. It was an argument, I guess, how I experienced it. And I would love to hear from you about how you experienced it as well, you know. But the way that I experienced it, I felt like you kept cutting me off. I wasn't able to complete my thoughts. You were screaming. I felt like whenever I would bring up how I felt and what I was experiencing, I felt like you would keep on turning the conversation back around to what you were feeling, and I'm sure those feelings are valid, but I felt like we never really had a lot of time to focus on what I was feeling. That was my experience. And I have to share with you that it's not something that's okay for me to continue to participate in conversations like that. I'm okay with us disagreeing, but what I would love to do is to have a conversation at this point in time about what are our individual needs that we need to have met when we're in conversation, and especially when we're in conflict. Let's talk about that. Some rules of engagement, per se. Let's talk about that. What do we need? Because maybe there's some needs I'm not meeting for you in those conversations. Let's at least make sure we're both aware of those things, because I want to make sure that our conversations flow well and that we're both getting our needs met. You see what I just did that? I kept it real cute. But I said, let's have a conversation. Let's set some standards in place. Because I know that's one of the questions I get all the time is, how do I turn things around, MJ? I've been in my relationship. I didn't know this stuff early on. So now we're in this toxic situation. How do I turn it around? This is how you turn it around. You have that conversation. You both document or agree with one another. What are going to be the rules of engagement? Your rule of engagement may be that when you're talking, he cannot cut you off and try to change the subject, that you need to feel fully heard. Right? His rule of engagement may be that you don't need to be raising your voice or something like that. Whatever it may be, you all agree to what you agree to. And then when you all move forward, and if that person continues to violate that, identify that in a moment. Hey, babe, not trying to make anything worse, but I know one of the things that we discussed was that you were going to let me finish my thoughts before you brought up another topic. This is one of these moments I'd like to finish my thought. Okay? And if he can't keep on doing it, okay, babe, I'm going to have to tell you, I'm not able to continue to participate in this conversation right now. I'm not able to do that because I've told you twice in this conversation about cutting me off and changing the subject to something else. And for me, it's very frustrating, and I'm not sure if I can show up as my best self right now. So I'm going to check out of this conversation. We can come back to this later. Okay? That's the power to walk away. Because sometimes when you let people know I'm about to walk away, oh, no, it's fine. Let me listen. And they'll do whatever they can to listen. Okay? You take your power back. Okay? Do not let anybody control your emotions or control you. I know that people say, oh, that's so much easier said than done. Trust me, I know it, baby, because I used to be Mr. Pop-Off. Okay? And what I realized was I was giving my power away. You say whatever you want to say to me. You doing whatever you want to do, doing all this toxic stuff with me. And what I would do is I would fly. Because what I realized was that can't nobody yell louder than me. Can't nobody be more aggressive with me than their mouth. And not that many people can do that. Very few people can actually do that, all right? That's one thing I got on lock, okay? So when I would deal with toxic exchanges, I would respond by making sure I was heard and making sure that other person couldn't dominate me within the conversation by going off. Okay, but here's what happened. I gave that person more power because now they can say, well, look, you're the one raising your voice, not me. As if somehow or another that's an indication of toxicity. Well, no, you can yell without raising your voice, okay? All right, some people can say things perfectly calm and say some really hurtful, awful, fucked up things. Pardon my language, but it's true. You see what I'm saying? So I learned I'm not going to feed into this because what I recognize is that in some cases, people would do things in order to get an escalated response out of you so that they can then redirect the narrative to focusing on how you came across rather than focusing on what was the initial topic at hand. So one of the things that I've had to work on, just being very transparent with you, and I'm sure some of you all can benefit from this, and thank you so much for sharing this video. I see y'all saying you shared this. Let me know you shared it and tag some friends on this. I love you too, Toma. All right? One of the things I had to work on was how do I make sure that I only approach conversations when I'm clear about what I feel and when my emotions are not at a high. So one of the things that helped me when dealing with a toxic person is do not confront a toxic person when you know that you are at your angriest or most sad point. Get through those feelings first. One of the most helpful things you can do is talk to a friend. Talk to somebody else so you can vent it all out to them first and kind of organize your thoughts. Get it all out with them. Then, once you've gotten it out with them, then go to that person because now you've taken the edge off because you've gotten it all out. When you talk to that friend, you can cuss and fuss and everything like that. And this MF and you done got it all out. So by the time you come to them, you can be calm. When I tell you about my recommended ways of coming across as calm, I'm not no superhero, baby, okay? I'm just as human as you are, okay? I want to pop off when I feel like somebody's being toxic or trying to take advantage of me too. And the way I've learned to control myself is I have to allow myself to channel getting that out within a safe space before I go to that toxic person, because I know that when I go off on that toxic person or I'm coming across as very emotional, it takes me out of control of myself. And if I'm not in control of myself, I'm now giving control to that other person. Okay? This is very important. It is especially important when you're dealing with people who are very close to you. I'm talking about your spouse. I'm talking about your kids. I'm talking about your close friends. I'm talking about your family members. I'm talking about your parents. I'm talking about anybody who's very close to you because they know your triggers. And if you think for one moment that they are not willing to exploit those triggers for the sake of having an upper hand in an exchange with you, then you are out of your damn mind. You are out of your mind. Okay, they will do whatever they have to do to have the upper hand within that conversation with you, because the fact is that that's been the dynamic all along. So if you know that this is how they're going to perform, they're not watching this MJ Harris video. They're not working on themselves like you are. So knowing that they're going to keep on showing up to the table using the same standard operating agreement, using the same set of tools, you got to come different. And because if they never change, and they may never change, if they never change, at least you will be in control of yourself. And here's what will happen. When a toxic person learns that you are no longer willing to have exchanges in the same way, you're no longer willing to engage in the same way, when a toxic person recognizes that you are willing to say, you know what? Namaste, my dear, but I'm going to walk away before I cut you out. No, you can't say that exactly. Don't say it just like that. But you know what I'm saying? When they know that you're willing to walk away and say, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this conversation. If this keeps on going on, I'm not willing to deal with you. Because I will rather deal with the pain of losing you, than deal with the pain of continuing to deal with this toxicity. Okay? When they know that you are so much in control of your emotions, that you're willing to approach it from that powerful place, guess what they'll do? They'll stop bringing you that stuff, all right? They'll stop bringing that to your door, all right? They will find a way to disengage from you first because they don't want to deal with that. They're like, I'm good. I don't even want to deal with this. Okay, baby, no problem. We don't have to talk about it. Okay, they will back down. Okay, because now they're at a point of choosing between having a relationship with you or not having you at all. And here's the thing about a toxic person. Often, they're not aware of how toxic they are. They want to be loved. They want to be embraced. They want to be in relationship just as much as everybody else does. And what they will recognize is, listen, I'm not going to be able to have this relationship with this person, meaning you. I'm not going to be able to have this relationship with this person if I keep on approaching them in the same way. So even if I'm not willing to change, at the very least, I'm willing to disengage and not approach them with the same stuff I've been approaching them with. Because the fact is that they're going to value that relationship. All right? And so when it comes down to it, it all comes down to personal power. You are in complete and total control of how you deal with them. You cannot change them, but you can change how you approach them. Go ahead and click like and click share on this and watch it over and over and over and over again. I know so many of y'all reading your comments right now are talking about how you are struggling. You're struggling with toxic relationships and toxic people. And I believe that for many of you all, just starting to utilize some of these tips, and I'll give you more soon, can really help to change your situation for the better and allow you to be in control of your emotions and, most importantly, in control of your life. Go ahead and click like and click share. I love you, best friends. And if there are any other topics you want me to cover, comment below with those. Bye-bye. I'm trying to turn it off. Where's my button?